It's interesting to see this at a time when prediction markets are just exploding in popularity and use, and so much of what's happening on prediction markets are sports related, coincide with, one of the biggest sporting events on the planet. Is it a make or break moment for these platforms?
Tim, Scarlet, thank you so much for having me. This is a supercharging moment for prediction markets. Tim, you mentioned at the outset just the sheer volumes that are happening. When you look at the poly market winner contract, just betting on who's going to be the winner, it's seen almost $3 billion worth traded on that contract alone. Kalshi, as you mentioned, has seen $6 billion worth of notional trading volume. When the World Cup began, its notional trading volume surged by almost 40% in that week. So in terms of just where we're going with this, presidential elections really brought prediction markets into the game. The game now, being football, is making prediction markets so incredibly mainstream. This is a deeply important moment for the prediction market industry. What happens from here on in just shows the incredible popular appeal of prediction markets, particularly as we're having a 39-day tournament where the volumes are likely to grow as the game goes on.
And Yesha, you are particularly troubled, dismayed by what you see as content creators who are college age, so really appealing to young people, using dummy trades to promote trading to US-based investors. Walk us through what you've seen and why this is so problematic.
Well, one of the big appeals of prediction markets has always been this incredible transparency, the ability of people to bring their information into the fore, like being able to sort of put their perspectives into the prediction market to be able to get a real sense of insight as to what the probabilities on a particular outcome are likely to be. Now, Polymarket, it's been alleged by the Wall Street Journal, has been putting out a whole bunch of viral content that the Wall Street Journal piece alleges was completely fabricated and untrue. What the article was putting forward was that college-age creators trying to potentially appeal to that age demographic were making bets that were basically false and being persuaded or being pushed towards attracting US-based clients. Now, why that's problematic from a legal sense is that Polymarket is not supposed to have US-based persons trading on it. So just in terms of like the ethos of the prediction market industry, transparency, bringing information in, sits very uneasily with this marketing trend to maybe push viral content that at its heart is just not true. And that really creates a problem for regulators as they look to get their arms around how exactly to regulate this marketplace.
Professor Yadav, I'm curious about the market integrity, and maybe it's not as big of an issue with the World Cup and more of an issue with so-called mention markets. But when you have so many players, Kalshi, Polymarket, Robinhood's Rothera, DraftKings, Coinbase, all getting involved in World Cup betting, who's responsible for market integrity across this landscape?
Tim, you're asking the now $10 billion question, which is who gets to regulate this market? And I'd push back gently on the notion that market integrity is maybe not as important in the World Cup scene. The financial stakes here are huge. There are market makers here, which are professional institutional market makers that are jumping into this market. And as you and Denitza and Scarlett were mentioning earlier, insider trading continues to be an issue even in the context of the World Cup. So, for example, injury news, who the potential folks on the bench may be, who's going to start the lineup. These are all issues that can potentially be subject to knowledge that those in the locker room, those in the stand, very close to the action can get into. And so, market integrity does get implicated here, potentially in a hugely consequential way.
Yeah, look, I retract my point earlier, because all the things that you mentioned, I was only thinking about the score and just the outcome of the games. But but when you mention all those other things that can be predicted or bet on, you're absolutely right. There's the circle of who has knowledge or control of those things just gets bigger and bigger.
So, Tim, there are 400 contracts, more than 400 contracts just in a single prediction market alone, trying to reference any variety of outcomes, including things like, who is an injury candidate for a particular game. So these are potentially very problematic instances where regulators have to keep track of a deeply moving market and set of scenarios. Now, you asked at the very outset, who's going to regulate this? Well, the short answer is the CFTC is pushing to be the regulator for this market, but 11 states now are pushing back, and they're pushing back in a super hard way in a set of facts and circumstances that many commentators suggest will only be decided ultimately by the Supreme Court.
Yeah, I mean, if not the Supreme Court, maybe someone else. We're talking about $20 billion in monthly volume with World Cup bets, sports contracts, and crypto sports books all blurring together. I guess the distinction has kind of, collapsed, and I wonder if Congress should just step in and perhaps regulate these as gambling platforms.
Well, you're asking a really deep question, Scarlet, which is, what is this thing? The CFTC is arguing that these are essentially a form of derivative event contracts. The states are pushing back to say this is sports gambling, this is our domain, this is what we're really good at regulating. But as you can see, Scarlett, as you just mentioned, the financial stakes now are huge. The popular stakes now are huge. The complexity is huge. And so in that context, everybody has real skin in this game to be the chosen regulator for this space. Now, the fact that sports has become such a big component of it and not presidential elections as it was, previously, amps up the level of controversy even more. And so it's really up to the CFTC to make the case for itself that, in fact, it is a designated regulator. These are, in fact, derivative contracts, and that it, in fact, has the capacity and capability to oversee what is now becoming a really mammoth and financially consequential market.